Welcome to the U-Turn podcast. My friend, this is Ashley Stahl. I'm your host, and you are in the right place if you're ready to create a business, a career, a personal brand, or just a life that you're so proud of. And every single week, we want to support you by bringing you PhDs, subject matter experts, psychology practitioners, business leaders, all here on the show to elevate your success in business and also in life so that you can leave a legacy, you can amplify your authority, and you can really skyrocket the amount of opportunities you're creating for yourself in your career, whether you're corporate or you're a business owner. And if you are new here, again, my name is Ashley Stahl. I'm an international bestselling author of the book U-Turn, Get Unstuck, Discover Your Direction, Design Your Dream Career. And most importantly, I'm the CEO and founder of Wise Whisper Agency. I'm a top 100 TEDx speaker on the internet, and I was so inspired to create Wise Whisper and help clients craft their signature talk. We've helped hundreds of clients craft their talk, and we've also helped so many of them land spots on some of the biggest stages in the world, including the TED and TEDx stage. And so I am here on a mission to help every changemaker I know impact millions. Also, before we get into this episode, shout out to our friend Andy B. Mackin, the artist that has gifted us this sick new music for the podcast. Let's get into this week's episode. What's going on, U-Turn friends? Today is a very special day on the show. I'm bringing someone on who has an expertise in an area that, if I'm being really honest with myself, is not somewhere that I am who I want to be fully yet, and it's Leslie Tayne. She's an attorney. She's a very accomplished author, and she's not just any lawyer. She's a financial attorney, and she has a book called Life and Debt. And God knows, if you've been listening to me for a while, you know I've had my journeys with debt. She's the founder of Tayne Law Group. It's Tayne. And it's headquartered in Melville. And she has over 2 decades of experience in resolving very complex consumer and business debt issues. She's really dedicated her career to providing practical solutions to people, individuals, businesses when they're facing financial challenges. And she's had her company since 2001. And there's just so much here that I'm excited to talk about, whether it's bankruptcy, debt relief, how she's built her firm. And she's just such a, great reputation in the field. She's earned her consecutive listings on the New York Super Lawyers, recognized as a top-rated attorney in New York City. I mean, I just literally could go on. So Leslie, without further ado, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, this is, I obviously we don't know each other very well, but what I can tell you is that I had a very successful business when I was 26. It was an e-learning business, and it was right at the beginning of Facebook ads. And I ended up doing about $6 or $7 million in online sales for a course in like 3 months.
Wow.
And I ended up losing everything because I didn't know how to manage money. I didn't know how to manage a team. And looking back, I spent about 4 years paying off $500,000 of debt. Everything I earned went to it. And people would say to me over the years, "Oh, you should have claimed bankruptcy." And there was some sort of pride in me of like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, what if I can't get a mortgage? Like, I didn't really know. I just knew that there were ramifications, and I didn't know what they were. I didn't have education around me, to really get the right answers. So I'm excited to talk to you because I think a lot of people, if they're anything like me, they're pushing in their career, and that means taking financial risks. So I would love to just kind of hear a little bit more from you on why you've focused your practice on this. And I don't know, like anything you've seen that you think maybe relates to a lot of the people listening.
So it's almost a fluke that my practice ended up being in this area. I could never have planned for this career path. It's not something that you study or really specialize in when you go to law school. There's actually really no specialty in the law school career path from that perspective. But it's really morphed into a very interesting business for me, and one in which I'm super passionate about, and I advocate for consumer education and awareness on a regular basis, and just having these open discussions and people sharing their stories like you did really does help the listener and the people who are struggling and knowing that they're not the only ones in those circumstances. And it gives me great, not excitement, but also pride and joy to help people get from one point to the other, to be able to guide them and answer their questions. And when they're challenged with facing financial issues, like you did when you had challenges with the money as a result of the business and the mismanagement, being able to create a light at the end of the tunnel for people is really inspiring for me. And so that's why I continue to do what I do. And I really can fix these challenges. It just requires a different perspective and a willingness on the part of the debtor and my client to listen and trust and go for it.
Okay, so this is a weird share, but I found this random guy through my therapist at a time where, so basically what happened for me was American Express I scaled my ads on Facebook. The returns weren't there. And that's, I think, what happens for a lot of business owners is you take a risk and then a tsunami hits you where suddenly what you thought was going to be one thing is another with your finances. And next thing I know, American Express is calling me, offering me a payment plan. The payment plan ends after 12 months. And now, instead of putting $2,000 a month towards my $500K of debt principal, I'm putting $2,000 a month and it's just interest on the money that's just sitting there. Like I get this message from them saying, hey, your payment plan is over and now you owe us. And my therapist at the time was like, Ashley, I know this guy, Eric, and he's really helped a couple people and he can negotiate your credit card debt down. And that was like mind blowing to me. I'm like, they can just have a conversation and I don't owe this. Like, how is that real? So he ended up taking like $100,000 balance on one of my cards and turning it into $35K owed. And a family member bailed me out and I paid them off over a year. And I want to take anyone back into this moment with me because I think a lot of people are in this moment, perhaps right now, where they have a chunk of debt. It's really hard to pay it off and they don't know what their options are. Can you kind of center us right there for that person who is like, shit, this is really holding me back in my life and I don't know what to do next with it?
Sure. And I'm glad that you brought up that example because the days of settling debt for pennies on the dollar are over. So back in the day, yes, you could negotiate debt pretty low, but that is not what happens anymore. So unfortunately, there's a reality side to negotiating debt and the practical side of it. And if you're struggling to pay debt, there are a lot of solutions. And one of them is debt settlement. When debt settlement is done right, it is a beautiful thing. In my clients' cases, their credit scores go up. The debt goes away. They have more cash flow. In the worst case scenario, you end up being sued. You can get your wages garnished, your bank accounts frozen, your credit drops when it's mismanaged and it's done improperly. And there's a number of reasons why that happens. One is sometimes self-help. The consumer is looking for self-help and they think they can do it on their own and they don't realize the nuances and the challenges of negotiating debt. Or they've sought somebody out who's really not an expert. That's just some sort of company that sold them some product to them, and they felt that was the best way to go because it was a fast-talking salesperson, and then they ended up with more challenges than they thought they could ever imagine. So the settling of debt is one way to resolve debt issues. But again, when I look at people's debt problems, we're looking to see, why do we have this problem? What does the cash flow look like? What does the future look like short and long term? What are the goals? And it really can't be done just in a bubble. Here we can settle debt for X amount of dollars or X amount percentage and, come in and go out. It doesn't work like that anymore. And today it takes a long time to settle debt. And it requires delinquency. And what that means is that you can't be current on the payments. So you'd have to be behind and you'd have to be behind a certain amount of time. And using the American Express example, I could tell you from doing thousands of cases with American Express, and we have ongoing cases with them, that 35% is not a realistic number. And in many cases, American Express will sue you. And then you need a competent attorney to either file an answer for you and or negotiate some sort of resolution to avoid any of the outcomes of litigation. So I'm so happy that you brought that up. But, it's a struggle for the person who's struggling with debt. It's emotional. It's overwhelming. There's so much information on the internet. You don't know who to trust. Yep. And so therefore, it's something that it is not an easy decision.
Oh, and Leslie, the guy who did it for me, it felt like the freaking Wild West. I called him in on the debt hotline with me. I committed to the person that I would give this guy power of attorney to negotiate my debt on the phone. I don't even know this guy, but somebody was like, he helped, and it was all I could do. I had no option. I needed help. When you think about businesses growing their sales beyond forecasts, you probably think about a product with very high demand, a very focused brand, and influence-driven marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business making selling simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Shopify is home to the number one checkout on the planet, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So if you're growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout brands like Mattel and Heinz use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/U-turn, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/U-turn to upgrade your selling today. Again, that's shopify.com/U-turn. And luckily, this guy did me right. And not only that, exactly.
Luckily, because that's where the desperation comes from in. And when you are overwhelmed with debt, you are in an emotional state where it's very difficult to make decisions, and you are struggling to pay bills, you are struggling to make ends meet, you are fighting with your significant other, you have challenges at work. It's just a vortex of almost like a tornado of challenges that come about. So when somebody is a fast talker and they can say, "Oh, I can help you, we'll just do this. Here, give me power of attorney." I mean, just that word alone makes, me as an attorney shudder, because you give power of attorney to somebody, you're turning over certain legal rights to them, and you want to be very careful. We don't use power of attorneys, we use authorization, so that the client isn't feeling like they've lost all control in certain aspects. So again, when you work with somebody who's really looking out for you, when they have your best interests in mind, you will get all the explanation. You won't feel like it's the Wild West, and you will feel like, you'll have this aha moment of, I can feel I'm comfortable, I can trust, there's somebody there that has some accountability, and I understand what's happening. And I think that's what you maybe didn't understand at the time, was what was really happening. And unfortunately, they didn't explain it, but yet you did end up with a good outcome, thankfully.
Yeah, and luckily that person had worked with a lot of people. Actually, I want to ask you about power of attorney, because my CPA, and I think this might happen for some business owners, I needed them to get some sheets from the IRS for me. And in order for them to get those, they need to have me sign something that says power of attorney for them to have the right to contact the IRS and grab certain things for me. What are your words of wisdom for these sorts of administrative things? Like, is there a way to cancel it? Like, let's say, okay, fine, if I have to do this, you have this for this long, and we can cancel and nullify that agreement? Or what would be your recommendation for those sorts of business things where it's not just an authorization?
So when you are on the end of somebody requesting a power of attorney for you to sign, you want to ask a couple questions. What is the nature of the power of attorney? Does it have an expiration date on it? And is it limited? So in your case, if I am signing a limited power of attorney that allows your accountant or tax preparer to get certain documentations for a certain tax year, see how limited that is? That it's very restricted when they can get it, how they're getting it, and the time frame for getting it, and an expiration date. If you leave that open and you said, here you can contact my creditors and you can get any information and pay bills from me and access my accounts, it's really broad. So as a consumer, when somebody asks you to sign that, you definitely want to, again, look to advocate for yourself and ask the questions. What am I signing here? Can you show me the language that limits it? And is there an expiration date on these things? I think the challenge comes, and it's the same thing in the debt settlement world and the debt resolution world. The reality is most consumers don't know the questions to ask.
Exactly.
So it becomes difficult to advocate for yourself when you're not sure. You're in really uncharted territory. And so you're not sure the questions to ask somebody. But you want to, that's why working with attorneys and accountants and people who have tremendous reputations is important, because they will put your best interest or hopefully they'll be putting your best interests ahead because they have ethical obligations to do so.
See, this is the thing that makes me so sad for so many people is that, like, I think about when I join Hulu on my television screen, it's like the terms and conditions are like fucking 25 pages and I don't understand what they say. And I'm like, what is wrong with this world that I'm like, I have 2 graduate degrees and this is hard for me. So
I'll tell you a secret.
Yeah.
One way to get around that. So when you're having a streaming service, it's very difficult because you don't have the option to have it printed. But let's say you're a consumer and you're going to go into a hospital. You're now going to potentially incur a debt. So you can ask a provider to print the contract for you. You probably have the option to call Hulu. I'm sure if I read the fine terms and conditions that you don't necessarily have to agree to it on the screen, but there may be a way to request it in writing if you really wanted to spend the time to read it. The average consumer won't really understand the majority of what's in those disclosures and the terms and conditions because a lot of it is legalese. But if, let's say, you're going into a hospital and and they put it on an electronic board to sign, like an iPad, and so you have no idea. You're just signing away. So I would suggest that you ask to have it printed. You have the right to have those documents printed. You have the right to ask questions. Sometimes, like I was in a hospital situation and the girl comes up to me and says, here, you just need to sign this. I said, well, what am I signing? Oh, you're signing that, we can do this, this, and this. I said, wait a second. So you walked up to me and said, hey, just sign this without explaining it, but I don't want to sign this. Do I have the option to not sign it? She goes, oh yeah, you can waive it. I said, great, then I waive it. So ask the question, what am I signing? Have somebody with you that can ask the question if you're not in the condition to ask those questions, and ask them to print it. If you're going in for procedures or other things, and this is how people end up in all kinds of medical debt, because this is where things are not included, like anesthesia isn't included in a procedure and you end up with a $3,000 bill, you can ask for those terms and conditions ahead of time. I'm going to be going in for a procedure. Would you please send me the terms and conditions ahead of time so I can review them? And generally, even in those situations, I edit them and I write, all providers must be within my insurance, so that I don't end up with a surprise bill someplace. And if I end up with a surprise bill, then I can go to what I signed. And even electronically, you have the ability to write in there something in those electronic boxes. So when you're looking at situations like that, just be aware that you have rights and you have the ability to ask questions and find ways. And if you can't get the questions answered, then you have a choice. You have a choice whether you sign up for the streaming service or not. And you have a choice whether you sign certain documents or not. You just don't necessarily realize that you have that choice.
Well, the problem is that a lot of people don't have freaking time for this. It's like, who has time for, like, I'm not going to be, I was like trying to get a new show on Hulu that was blocked unless I signed up. It's like, well, I'm not going to sit here and call, but I love your suggestion. I love just to know that the power is there. But realistically,
that's
people
the
aren't going to do this.
practical side, right? So that's
exactly.
what we said earlier. Like I said earlier, there's the practical side of these things. And if you want to watch a show and you want to watch it instantaneously, then you're going to have to agree to the terms and conditions. It's unlikely that in that situation you'll end up in debt. But in other situations where you're talking bigger numbers and more exposure, then you definitely want to be more careful about being impulsive. And impulsivity does get people into debt.
I totally, and it's interesting. I reflected after paying off all my debt and becoming debt free that what I found about debt is, for me, it was 2 things. Number one, it was denial, because the number got so big. It was like, yo, Ashley, why didn't you notice it when it was 20K? Why did you notice it when it was 500? It's not that I didn't notice it, but I didn't listen to it. I didn't respect it. I thought, oh, it's going to turn around, right? It was denial. I'm going to fix this. This next ad spend is going to be the thing that brings in the leads. It didn't work out. And then also, I think, I have a friend, she got bankrupt almost. I mean, she hasn't claimed bankruptcy, but she has a divorce. She married a guy that basically was a fraud and is in jail now, and she had no idea. And then she married him, and it cost her all this money, and every penny she has is gone because of this guy. And she's in debt, and I'm watching her not want to She's lying to herself about how bad it is. She keeps telling herself she's, cutting her living expenses. Then I show up, there's all these designer bags. She's barely making rent. I'm like, you got to sell your stuff. And so I think that there's obviously mindset and healing to do around debt. From a logistical perspective, a tactical perspective, I want to bring us into the reality of somebody who's sitting, listening to this podcast right now. Let's say they have $100,000 sitting on a credit line for their business, on 3 credit cards. They're stressed out. The interest is accruing. They're making the minimum payments. Something didn't go right. What are their options? Where do they go from here?
So when you're looking at facing a mounting amount of debt, even in the situation that you described where you just thought the next sale would get you over the hump. And that's the biggest issue with my business clients is that they think that, I'll just get another sale. If the next sale comes in, if the receivable comes in on time, I'll be able to pay the bills, and time goes by and the debt just continues to mount. So when you're looking at that, you have to take a step back early on in the process. But let's assume that you didn't take it on early on. You have to take a look at what your income is and your expenses and what's happening. There's like this stop moment. Mm-hmm. Stop and take a look. What's happening here? Can I get a clear picture on what's going on? Seek out somebody who can give you a consultation like myself, who's a business financial attorney who can look at the challenges you're facing and assist you to make the good decisions about how to then finance and resolve the debt. What ends up happening is that today, because getting traditional loans at banks is so difficult, many people turn to fast cash or something called merchant cash advances that provide them with fast cash in about 24 to 48 hours just based on bank statements and not based on income or credit checks. So you end up saying, I'm struggling right now. I just need this money because there'll be another sale or money will come in. And they go out and they take this fast cash, these funding products. They're also factoring or futures purchases. They have a few different names, but mostly under merchant cash advances. And they take these things and they end up taking one after the other. And with that, they end up in even more debt because they've strangled themselves. So when you're facing this challenge early on, the key is to not be desperate. And I find the biggest challenge with many of my clients is the level of desperation they're at to not only save the business, manage their personal and business finances, and they make decisions that are grounded and rooted in desperation. And as a result, they make the worst possible decisions. Obviously, there's a bankruptcy option in many cases, but there's also to work in the business world with somebody who's a business financial attorney who really specializes and focuses on helping somebody make the right decisions, ask the right questions, and see the bigger picture where they can provide them routes to get out of dark tunnels. There's obviously also debt settlement and ways of finding traditional and non-traditional funding sources. The challenge is if you take more funding sources when you have a limited amount of income and you then can't pay that back, you've now added a huge amount of debt and stress onto an already very tenable situation.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about, and I want to just highlight these for my note takers. Her first thing was to actually assess your numbers. And it's funny because that sounds obvious, but it's not, especially for somebody who's not great at money. It's built on not looking at the money. So it's like getting really honest. And people do a lot of like back of the envelope math versus like a real spreadsheet with real numbers. You talked about fast.
So I can tell you how many times I ask the question. It's the same question I ask every single time. Do you know how much debt you have? I think it's around. How much have you considered a budget? Not really. Do you know what your available cash flow is to help resolve the debts that you have? What can you commit to on a monthly basis? And let me tell you that 80%, 70, 80% can't answer those questions. So if you're in a situation, personal or business-wise, and you can't answer those basic questions, then you are not only you're not ready for help, but you're probably likely going to get yourself into bigger trouble.
Okay, well, I know debt accrues every day, so I can imagine, I'm not trying to defend these people, but if they're like, it's around this, it's like the interest changes every day. So they might be like, it's $94,112. Are you giving, is that, because I can imagine somebody, if it was me being like, it's around 97,000. You know what I mean?
That's fine. Around is totally fine. I never need to the penny.
Okay.
I just mean around, but it's not uncommon for someone to say that they have 200,000 when it ends up being 700,000.
Holy shit.
Or I have 35,000 in credit card debt, but it's really 56,000 in credit card debt. So it's not the small numbers. Or I say, how many do you have? And they can't remember. I think I might have 3, or maybe I have 5. I'm not sure which one I paid off. And these are business people who can't answer these basic questions. And I am the first advocate for everybody. I'm non-judgmental about how you got here, why you got here, as so long as you got here. But if you are asking for help and you're listening to this because you need some direction, the first place, you have to understand what's happening.
Okay, and then from there, you talked about fast funding. Are you talking about calling your bank for a credit line, or what are you referencing there?
So that's not fast funding. Calling a bank for a credit line is probably the slow way. It's the better way, but it's a slow way. The truth is, in order to get a credit line, you have to have an existing business that has positive cash flow, generally assets, good credit for the business, an established history. And so when I say fast cash, I mean you go online and you're looking for a loan, and up pops some company that says, we'll deposit X amount of dollars in your bank account in 24 to 48 hours and no credit check.
Got it. Okay.
Those are factoring agreements, futures purchases, and the interest rates on those are in excess of 200%. So if you borrowed 50 grand, you're going to pay back $60,000, $80,000, depending on the structure of that merchant cash advance. They take the money out of your daily or weekly receivables. You give them access, including a power of attorney, to your bank accounts, and they pull the money out of your receivables on a daily basis or weekly basis. That is a highway to, frankly, it's a highway to hell.
Okay, I have a question around interest, and I feel like this is such a basic question, but I think so many people don't get it, and I totally have no judgment on that, which is understanding interest. I think a lot of people, they don't really understand what it means, right? So let's say that, Mary, who's listening right now, is like, okay, great, I have established business. I need to get a credit line because I'm scaling my business and I need $50,000 for advertising, and I have the conversion rates and the team and every reason to believe in this bet, right? Like, people make bets. That's entrepreneurship, right? They get a credit line, and let's say their daily interest rate is 15%. Or 10% or whatever. Can you explain for somebody what that really means?
So when you're operating a business and you are going to take out a credit line or a line of credit so that you can fund certain projects, perhaps manufacturing or even in the transportation trucking industry, there's many businesses that work off of the need for regular lines of credit. The question becomes, what is the interest rate that you're paying? Assuming it's a traditional loan and you're paying an actual interest rate, there is a daily rate that also is connected to the APR. It's complex because if you're going to break it down to what you're paying per day, it's no different than, let's say, in your mortgage. There's a per diem interest of what you pay on the mortgage during the month, which is why, like, if you pay off the debt earlier in the month, you pay less interest than you do if you wait till the end of the month. So when you're looking at interest as a business, you want to stay within reason on the interest rates that you have. So these days, interest rates are relatively high still. But if you're looking at interest rates, 18, 20, 25%, you're in the high range. And that's an overall interest rate. And obviously, when you have an interest rate, you're borrowing money and you're paying to borrow the money. So every day that you hold the money is a day that you are going to owe the principal, the amount you took, plus the interest that the bank or the lender or the funder is charging you for that. So there's an expense when you take money, whether it's on a credit card, a line of credit, a merchant cash advance. The expense is the interest. Sometimes there's other fees, but since the question's related to interest, as a business owner, you want to be aware of what that is. And again, it's another question that many business owners can't answer for me. And these aren't just small business owners. These are business owners who have businesses in the multi-millions, where they look at their debts and they're not sure how much of an interest they're paying. I can tell you that on my end, from my perspective, I know exactly what the interest rates on any type of financial product that my business uses. I know when the bills are due. I know what the balances are. I know exactly how much the payment needs to be, when, where, why, and how. And so as a business owner, in order to really run a very successful business, especially if you're running it basically on your own and you don't have a full-time CFO and an operations manager, an operations officer, you need to be in the know as that business owner. You need to know what you borrowed, how much it costs you to borrow that money, how you're paying it back, where the funds are coming from. And this is all part of entrepreneurship. And nobody said it would be easy. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a business, and I also have helped thousands and worked with thousands of businesses, every kind of business you can imagine. The common denominator is really about being in the know and being aware. And I can tell you the business owners that are organized, that can put everything on a spreadsheet for me, and I can look at the spreadsheet and they can look at the spreadsheet, are in not necessarily better financial positions, but they have more of an awareness about what's actually happening in their business. And if you want to grow your business and you want to maybe potentially sell your business or expand the business or scale it in any way, shape, or form, you need to be aware of all of the details of all of your financial products and your cash flow.
Okay, a couple questions. You said 18 to 25% is a high interest rate. What would you consider a pretty good interest rate for the business owners who are listening right now and they are thinking about taking on a credit line or some form of debt like that?
Single digits, but it's very hard to get under 10% or under 9% these days without really excellent credit.
Okay.
So it's a challenging number to find. Hopefully interest rates will come down. Obviously, there's an upside and a downside to interest rates going up and down. But for the purposes of this, the lower the interest rate, the better. If you have a variable interest rate, then it changes with, then there's something that affects the interest rate. So the variable is usually tied to prime interest rate. But in a non-traditional, there could be variable, and that could depend on the amounts that you're actually borrowing. So understanding the terms of the financing agreements that you have is really important. Obviously, the lower the interest rate, the less cost it is to borrow the money. But it's my experience, most lines of credit given to businesses fluctuate, and they are not set interest rates.
Okay, so a couple mathy questions, which might be out of your thing. It's just so far out of my thing that I'm like, let me ask you, Leslie, and see if we could tinker with this. And by the way, I don't know why my name is Ashley, but people call me Leslie all the time. It's so weird. Okay, so I had a friend, she just was talking about this at dinner, and she was like, okay, I'm getting a credit line. It's $100K and it's a 10% interest rate. So it's kind of cool to know this conversation with you, because I would have told her that's actually not a bad interest rate. I didn't even know to say that. Like 10, if that's as close as you can get to the single digits is 10, versus 9. But
yeah, that's not a bad interest rate today. It would be considered what we call a competitive interest rate.
So if she said it was 10% annual and then 10% daily periodic rate. Can you so let's say she puts $50,000 on this credit. I think it was like 10% point something, but let's just keep it even. So let's say she puts $50,000 on this credit line and she has a 10% annual rate and she has a, 10% daily periodic rate. And let's say she keeps that $50K sitting there for 3 or 4 months. Can you help us? You don't have to be exact with your math, but can you help us understand a little bit about what that would really look like for the business owner?
So again, it's going to depend on how she's paying it back, right? So on what the payment schedule looks like and what her payment requirements are going to be. So if she doesn't have to pay it back, it depends on the terms of the agreement, right? So she might be required to make monthly payments. Mm-hmm. She might decide to make larger than the minimum required payments, which would change what the overall interest is on the money that she borrows. So unfortunately, it's not a straight up answer. But when you're looking at repayment, when you make a higher payment on money that's outstanding, you're going to pay lesser interest. Let's use a student loan, for example. So if you have a student loan and we generally recommend that you make an extra payment a year, which could knock almost 5 to 10 years off of your overall payments and reduce the interest considerably on what you end up paying out. It's the same thing, same concept when you're looking at the business loans. If you make a higher payment than the minimum payment and you pay it down faster, you'll pay less interest.
I guess I'm just trying to understand,
is also potentially a write-off, right? So when you're looking at making these decisions, you want to make these decisions based on a discussion with your accountant.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand, cause she's got about 50K she's going to throw on there for 6 months. And I imagine this is a lot of people. They're like, I have a great business. I need a financial cash flow surge.
I'm going to be fine, but I need it to sit there for a while. What does it mean that it's 10% annual? Like if it's $50,000 just sitting there for a year. So these are things that I still don't fully understand, but going back to what you were saying, like taking a real look at the numbers, you're saying like that's the first step, like really know your numbers, know your interest rates. What would be the next step if somebody's looking at it saying, I thought I could pay this off in a couple of months, but I can't, and the interest is kind of freaking me out every month. Like, what do they do next?
I think you can't freak out about the interest you're paying, because if you have a mortgage on your house, you're paying interest. So if you carry a credit at all, you're paying interest. The question is, how do you minimize that? So one, you can never freak out, especially if you can't pay it off. The key is to at least make sure that you can make the payments that you're obligated to make.
Yeah.
As long as you can meet those payment obligations and you're not struggling, then there's no reason to freak out. Make a higher payment if you can. If more money comes in, see if you can pay it down without penalty. And it doesn't mean that you have to pay it off right away. Sometimes it takes years to pay off certain types of loans and certain types of funding products. So I'm not against the idea that you're paying interest on something. There is something called, and I talked about this in my book, about good debt versus bad debt. It is good debt to have something that works for you, that is benefiting you, whether that's in your business or personally. And if you're paying interest on it, as long as the interest is reasonable and the overall cost of the money or the product that you're financing doesn't become exorbitant in your mind, whatever that might be. And that's a sliding scale. So for me, I wouldn't be comfortable paying double digits in a funding situation. If I needed the money and I didn't have a choice, and that's what the best interest rate I could get, but I needed the money and the terms were really good, then it might make sense. So again, when you're looking at all of these things, when you're looking at, what your annual interest rate means and the total cost of borrowing money, you want to look not only at the interest rate, but also what are the terms? What are the conditions? How is this impacting you? Is it benefiting you? Is it becoming a hindrance in your ability to meet other obligations?
I love that. Yeah, I actually find it really nice that you talked about this, because you're here as a debt attorney. So what you're seeing is, well, you're not a debt attorney, financial attorney, but you've seen a lot of horrible for people. Like you meet people when they're in a bad thing and they're not having a good time.
Stuff. I see lots of bad stuff.
But it's nice to hear you kind of be friends with debt too, and say sometimes it's a good decision. Sometimes it's supportive. Like when I look at my business now, so we've helped clients, we have a pretty done with you, done for you offer to help clients write and book a TED Talk. So we've had a lot of people like you, Leslie, come in and be like, I want to do a TED Talk. And we meet with them over 4 Zoom calls. We pull the talk out of them. We help them craft the script. It's very little work on their end, a lot of work on our end, and we get their TEDx talk booked. In order for us to scale our business, I had to build my team. And it went from me being one person to me, I just got 15 clients, and I need to pay all these writers up front. Like a lot of the writers I wanted wouldn't take later payment, and my clients were on payment plans. And I was just like, shoot, I have a choice right now. I either do this all myself and kind of die, or I get investors, I take on funding, or I get a credit line. And I ended up choosing to get a credit line. I paid it off right away because I had the payment plans. But I think it's really powerful for people to also see debt as a resource. So can you share with us when it's a good idea to take on debt?
So debt, initially, there's so much good about taking on debt, especially if it changes the course of a particular plan. So we can talk about student loan debts. My student loan debt got me a wonderful career. I paid double what I borrowed, but okay. So I paid a lot for my education and I paid a lot for my career, but it took me to really great places, and I was able to support my family and raise my children and do everything as a result of taking on a huge amount of debt. And it took me a long time to pay off, and it definitely impacted my credit for a long time. But in the end, I was able to build my career and pay it off. So that's good debt. Yes, at the time it was a struggle and I felt like it was bad debt. But in the end, it started out as good debt. It was good debt and it benefited me. Business is the same way. I've had lines of credit for my business when I've done different types of expansion or other types of projects. And having that available funds and knowing that it was there for me if I needed it was something that really benefited my business and gave me the cushion to do what I needed to do. And I see that a lot with clients and their businesses. The funding of business products, the funding of new businesses is a great way to start out with good debt. The time that becomes bad debt is when it's taken out and you know when you take it out, you can't pay it back, or you have no intention to pay it back. And you are sitting in a situation where your business is failing, but you're going to take the money anyway and just to cover certain expenses, and then you really have no ability to pay it back. That's really bad debt, because in the end, that bad debt is going to become, it started out problematic, it added to the problem, and it didn't benefit in any way. So while that may seem like a simplistic thought process, how does it benefit me? That is the thought when you are taking out money. Well, I'm going to borrow money to get a car, to lease a car. That's borrowing money. Is it a car that I can really afford? And is the finance rate something that's appropriate for me, with the payments? Am I buying a house I can afford? Am I taking on a mortgage that makes sense, or a second mortgage, or a home equity line of credit? These things start out as great investments, and taking a mortgage is a great debt. It helps your credit. There's so many benefits to having a mortgage. However, if you bite off more than you can chew and you took on a house that you can't afford and it's eating up 50 to 75% of your budget every single month, your good debt is quickly now going to become bad debt because you're way in over your head. So when you're assessing good debt versus bad debt, you have to look at how it's going to impact the cash flow. What is it really doing for you? Is it meeting your goals and objectives, whether it's personally or professionally?
Okay.
It's a lot of thinking.
Yeah. Okay, this has been a really fun conversation. I mean, not fun for a lot of people who are actually in debt, but fun for me because it feels like this is a taboo topic that people have a lot of shame about, and it makes me happy to help people. So kind of going to my final question is like, somebody's listening, they've got that debt sitting there, they do the numbers, and they feel in over their head. Would you say the next step is to contact somebody like you, Leslie, to look at what their options are, get a CFO that can do a cash flow thing, like a fractional person? Like, what would that be?
I think reaching out to a financial attorney as a lifeline is invaluable. There are lots of people that contact me and consult with me, whether it's for an hour or they consult with me on an ongoing basis. It's really great to get a perspective of somebody who has the history and the experience to understand the pitfalls of financial challenges and the red flags initially of those situations. Unfortunately, when you're in the situation, it's hard to see what are the red flags, and very often they'll paint the red flag white when they're looking at solutions, thinking that a solution makes sense, when in the end it really doesn't. So I think reaching out and to a lifeline, to somebody who really understands this area, a financial attorney is a smart money move. And as far as the really hiring a CFO or an operations person, you may not even have the budget for something like that. It might not make sense. I have seen, not that I say anything bad about fractional CFOs or even full-time CFOs, but I have seen CFOs make some of the biggest financial mistakes in businesses, and the mistake in the business owner is allowing the CFO to take over without still having detailed conversations with that CFO as to the how and why of decision making. So if you're hiring somebody like that, make sure it's somebody who's reputable, and use that in conjunction with a financial attorney who can then guide you on the legalese of the debts that you have and the financial consequences. Because remember, there's a lot of legal consequences for defaulting on debt. And it's not just the lawsuits. There's all other aspects of legal challenges that you could be facing, certainly as a business owner, from liens against your businesses and bank accounts, confessions of judgment, right of set-off for banks to take money out of your account, the impact of assets and other businesses that you might have. And so because there's so much detail of the legalities of the the agreements that you sign to take funding products, it is extremely advisable to speak to an experienced financial attorney in conjunction with, let's say, your financial planners, your accountants, and your CFOs.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show. And where can everybody find you?
So you can certainly find me online and social media, from LinkedIn and TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X, and of course at taynelaw.com. The book is Life in Debt, and you can certainly put in Leslie Tayne, debt attorney, or New York debt attorney. I'm likely going to come right up. So, or Leslie attorney, it'll come up anyway.
Thank you so much. And by the way, everybody, while we were talking, I shot a text to my friend who got the credit line. She's had a $90,000 balance on her credit line for 3 months, and it was a 13.4% daily periodic rate, she told me, and it's cost her $3,000 interest to have it sitting there. So I don't know if that helps anybody to hear a little bit about a credit line from Chase Bank as we go, but I just think this was so wonderful. So thank you again for coming on, Leslie.
Of course, and thank you so much for having me. I love the topic and the discussion.
Thanks for tuning in to the U-Turn podcast. I hope you learned so much in this episode and you're putting it into action today. We would love to hear from you. Slide into my DMs at Ashley Stahl or leave a written review if you're inspired. It would mean so much to us. Be sure to subscribe to the show because, as you know, the more subscribers we get, the better the guests we can bring you. And in the meantime, if you're looking to skyrocket your personal brand and impact millions,
head on over to wisewhisperagency.com to learn more about how we can help you craft your greatest talk of your life, how we can help you get booked on some of the biggest stages in the world, even the TED or TEDx stage. We'd love to hear from you, and that's it for this week.
Trying to solve, always think you know it. I've been thinking about you up against that wall. It's too late, I fell on every fall. Holding ground on I hold the ground on hold the ground on. Late night drive, what you trying to do tonight? I swear you don't even try. Yeah, you still I can try and make you mine, but I don't think you like guys. I don't think you like guys. I don't think I should try. I guess it's time to give up, but I wanna give up.